In this video, you're going to learn how to create a setting conducive to learning. After engaging in this session, you'll be able to describe numerous strategies for creating a classroom environment conducive to academic achievement and students' personal well-being. So you're creating an environment not only to promote students' academic achievement, where students get A's or where students get good grades, but also that promotes students' personal well-being and their happiness. When studying this week's chapter, I want you to activate your prior knowledge and experience in K to 16 settings. So you have experienced quite many teachers as you grow up. So try to make connections and use your imagination rather than just simply reading or skimming the text or watching the video. Right, so let's first activate your long-term memory. And I hope you did the activity before watching this video. So teachers who really manage the students well versus teachers who did poorly. Why do you think they manage students well or poorly? And let's say there are teachers who manage students really well. Then the question is, which types of teachers do you think is better? Like teachers who made students behave out of fear versus teachers who made students behave out of autonomy, like out of their own choice. How would they differ in instructional strategies, attitudes, approaches, and etc.? So we are going to learn more about this in this video. So classroom management in a nutshell is maintaining a classroom environment conducive to learning and achievement. And of course, there can be many types of classroom achievement, but we are focusing on strategies that promote academic achievement and students' personal well-being. There are many effective classroom management strategies, and those are listed in the textbook. First and foremost, we should create a loving and supportive environment. We have been learning how important it is to foster an inclusive and safe environment. We also need to set high expectations and standards. And rather than just imposing the rules and enforcing the rules, we should explain why some behaviors are acceptable and others are not. Consistent enforcement of reasonable rules are important. And if you can make students included in the decision making of the rules or some kind of some classroom policies, you may you may implement the rules without thwarting students' autonomy. And you also need to provide some age-appropriate opportunities for independence. So you just cannot control students to always follow the rules. You need to give them some choices and opportunities for independence. Then the question, among these different types of strategies, which do you think is the most important thing for students' behavior management? I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Well, apparently all of these are very important, but the research shows that consistent enforcement of reasonable rules is really important for students' behavior management. And I also personally think this is the most important thing, but also very challenging. Um, so there are two parts in this strategy, right? First, you need to have reasonable rules. So you should not have too many rules. Like for instance, oh, you should write the essay in only in black or blue pen. Like surprisingly, there are some teachers when I was in middle or high school who kind of enforce those kind of rules. Like you shouldn't like listen to ear like music when you're studying. Other rules that I really hated were like the hair restriction. Like I could not dye my hair, or I had to wear like a certain types of shoes, like black leather shoes when I was in high school, because my high school was a private institute that had really that had all kinds of weird, absurd, strict rules. So you need to make sure that you have reasonable rules in the class, hopefully not too many, but also you need to be consistent when administering those rules, which means you need to be fair when you are administering the rules, and you should observe your own rules. For instance, if you say that the students will get some consequences when the students do something, you need to you need to say what you preached by uh, giving them some kind of consequences when students engage in this kind of misbehaviors. Now, I'm going to show you a video that portrays the importance of consistent enforcement of reasonable rules.
A lot of my students come from middle schools where um, teachers have trouble controlling the class, and so they're used to talking whenever they want, essentially. So one of the most important things I do in the first few days of the school year is communicate to them really clearly that it is unacceptable to talk when they shouldn't be talking, and that I will enforce that expectation. And for a lot of them, it's a shock to see someone have such high expectations in terms of whispering and preparedness. And if in the first few days of the school year they see not only that I give those consequences, but that I follow through, that you will have a meeting if on 2 separate occasions you don't meet my expectations, that you will get a call home if on 3 separate occasions you don't meet my expectations, and that you will go to the office if on 4 separate occasions you don't meet my expectations. When they see that not only am I consistent and fair with delivering those consequences, but that I'll do it every time and I'll follow through, then they just feel that this is a safe place where they know what to expect based on their behavior. And when they get that, then it just becomes calm. And as long as I make sure I'm fair with regards to giving out those consequences, then there's respect that can be maintained. Whereas if I were unfair, I don't even deserve respect. I need to be able to treat each and every one of them like someone who is capable of doing the right thing.
I kind of thought he was weird a little bit, but once I got to know him, I thought like he was a good guy. Personally, he was a tad bit strict, but I thought that's what we needed in order to stay on track. We need that strictness to keep us on track so we can be where we need to be in school. So I don't think that the strictness was a bad thing. But he also made class a lot of fun. Like he would do music examples and we could like walk around. It wasn't like sit in the seat, write down what he says, and then that's it and you leave. We actually did stuff and it made it enjoyable. Like I didn't mind coming to English class this last year.
The consistent enforcement of reasonable rules, along with some high expectations, can actually create a safe learning environment because students know what the teacher's expectations are, and students find those kind of rules as like comfortable boundaries. Another strategy, another aspect of classroom management that I want to mention is arranging the classroom. You need a physical environment that minimizes distractions. And this can include many different aspects such as room temperature, noise, etc. So think about arranging the furniture like whether you want to encourage student interaction or if you want to do some more individual work. So you need to arrange the furniture or desks, chairs, depending on the activities that you want to like use during your instruction. So I think we have learned this a little bit when we are learning about behaviorism, but we really need to use seating arrangements and classroom environment wisely to maximize our instruction and students' learning. But what really is important are preventive management strategies. So before students engage in misbehaviors or before students demonstrate some kind of problematic behaviors, it is important to use preventive management strategies. So how can we prevent those kind of mismanagement or misbehaviors? First and foremost, we need to establish and maintain good working relationships or having rapport with students. And we have already learned about the importance of motivation, right? And not surprisingly, students who are motivated or students who are engaged in classrooms or in learning processes demonstrate fewer behavioral problems. So you need to create a psychological climate where students feel safe and are intrinsically motivated. Setting reasonable limits for behaviors, as Mr. Hester in the video did, is important. We can also need to plan activities that keep students on task. And we should also regularly monitor what students are doing. So this is also called as wittedness. By wittedness, it means that like teachers having their eyes on the back. So they know what students are doing, and they know usually when students get distracted, and they know what kind of misbehaviors can students can engage in the classroom. So this kind of regularly monitoring students without having them feeling without making them feel as if they are being observed or overseen is really important. We can also modify instructional strategies when necessary. Um, and also we need to take developmental differences and student diversity into account. And I'll briefly touch about this last point at the end of this video. So, but one main question, how can we set reasonable limits for behavior? Because like setting boundaries can be a little difficult because like we want to, we have learned the importance of student autonomy, and we want to respect student choices. We don't want to be strict and mean teachers. So how can we set reasonable limits for behavior? So these are the tips that I found very helpful when I set my limits in the classrooms. So first of all, you need to establish rules and procedures at the beginning of the year. And this is one of the reasons why I set my expectations in the core syllabus, because I think that is the first communication, or that is the first message that students get from me when they are participating in the course. So on the core syllabus, I explicitly wrote out that I expect students to spend about like 9 hours for this course, and I have high expectations for them, and so on. So establishing rules and procedures at the beginning of the year is really important. But at the same time, you should present rules and procedures in an informational manner. So one of the activities that you can do you remember the very first activity that you did of this class? We did Kahoot, right? The Kahoot quiz based on the um, syllabus. So rather than just presenting rules and procedures and explaining in one way, you can have students engage in by doing some kind of like fun activities like quizzes, or not the midterm type or final exam type quizzes, but like low risk, low stake quizzes. Students usually enjoy, and they can learn about the rules and procedures in more fun way. You should not only like administer the role consistently, but if you think that changing the roles can benefit students, you also need to consider adapting and modifying them. In the process, you should acknowledge students' feelings about requirements while enforcing rules consistently and equitably. Now, I want to ask you a slightly more challenging question. Now, how can we set those limits without decreasing students' autonomy? Maybe I can give you like 10 seconds to think about. Like, how can we make those rules and enforce those rules without having students feeling that their autonomy is being compromised? Well, it's not that difficult. You need a little bit of tweak on each strategy. So when you are establishing rules and procedures at the beginning of the year, engage students. So ask students what kind of rules that they think would be appropriate for the rest of the semester to promote their own learning. You can also present rules and procedures in an informational and fun way. And in addition, you can explain students why there exist certain rules. You can explain that the rules exist not for yourself, but for students to create a safer environment, to create a more conducive learning environment for everyone. And you can also, by periodically reviewing existing rules and procedures, emphasize that rules exist for students' learning. And the last two tips, acknowledging students' feelings about requirements. Some rules um, may be hard for students to follow, or but you can like empathize with those students. Like those rules are indeed hard to follow, but you can also communicate your expectation. But you believe in the students that students can follow those rules because these are the expectations. Enforcing rules consistently and equitably can also help you set limits without decreasing students' autonomy. And there's another aspect that I want to emphasize. So I hope your memory about motivation, your learning and knowledge about motivation is still um, uh, fresh in your mind. So targets is a mnemonic for remembering motivational strategies to promote positive classroom behavior. So now I want you to connect what you learned from for 2 weeks, different types of motivation theories into the classroom management. So as I keep emphasizing, if students are engaged, if students are motivated, you would have fewer behavioral issues or fewer misbehaviors in your classrooms. So tasks, you can provide some activities or assignments that are meaningful and authentic to promote students' value, whether they are utility value, attainment value, intrinsic value. Autonomy is also important, right? Giving them real choices can lead to intrinsic motivation, which was from self-determination theory. You should also, recognize you need to promote mastery goals by praising progress, improvement, and effort, and by refraining from comparing students with each other. Grouping can also be helpful when you're motivating students and promoting positive classroom behavior. So flexible grouping avoids implicit messages about the ability, refraining from ability grouping, but using another types of grouping, like based on interest or based on some kind of like relationships, can be more adaptive grouping strategies. When it comes to evaluation, you should minimize competition while giving concrete and constructive feedback. Time is also an important component of motivational strategies. You should use time flexibly so students can experience success before moving on to more complicated material. So do you remember what factors influence student self-efficacy? I mean, students believe that they can do and succeed in certain tasks. Their previous successes, right? So you need to give them enough time so that students can experience success. The last components are social supports. Um, social supports, which motivation theory that comes to your mind? Well, there can be many, but I think it is most closely related to like self-determination theory or relatedness. So you need to cultivate sense of belonging and respect among students. So again, I kind of want to emphasize how all of the learning, the course content that you have been learning are integrated and can be applied to foster a more like conducive, more like learning-oriented classroom. Last but not least, I want to address like how we can accommodate differences. Just to keep in mind, I know it can be hard. Like when I was a teacher, when students misbehaved, I sometimes also got angry because I was a human being. But I need to constantly keep in mind that many students, there could be many reasons why students' behaviors may differ and why students demonstrate such misbehaviors. It can be either a period of development, maybe students have not reached the developmental phase, or it can be individual characteristics. It can be temperament, personality, prior experiences. It can also the mismatch between my own culture and the student's own culture or ethnic background. The standards for behaviors may be different. Also, like gender or disability status may cause the differences um, in students' behaviors. So be aware that students' unexpected or undesirable behaviors may arise from different sources. As teachers, I think we need to, if we really want to help our students succeed, we need to endorse the beliefs that there are no bad students, but only bad behaviors.